Hey guys, Jameson DIY here, working on a 2005 Toyota Tundra 4.7 liter. We're doing the timing belt and water pump today. It's going to be a long video, so I'm going to try not to waste a whole lot of time. So the first thing we want to do is, if you have a skid plate, remove that, and we'll go ahead and get the coolant draining. So this is going to be a step-by-step video from start to finish of the timing belt and water pump. If all you need is just the timing belt part, I'll leave a link for that video. It'll just be a shortened version of this one. So you can just refer to the hard part, or the part that you're probably here for anyway. I'll also leave links for the parts I use, as well as some tools that might be helpful down there below. Anything that you buy through my Amazon links will give you a pretty small commission, very small, but it helps out, so I appreciate that. If you're buying stuff off Amazon anyway, just use one of my links and it'll help support videos like this. Okay, with the air tube out of the way, we want to get this radiator hose out of the way. What we're trying to do here is we want to get the fan and the fan shroud off. I want to take you down to the crank pulley first thing, because that could be a stopping point for a lot of you guys if you're doing it at home, because the bolt's really tight and of course the engine spins. So if you don't have the right tool or tools to get the crank pulley off, then this job could stop before you get too far. So that's why I want to take you down there as quick as possible, and so we can make sure that you can actually get this job done before you get too deep into it. Okay, so the fan has these 4 nuts on it. You can probably see a couple of them right here and here, and then there's 4 of them anyway. There's a couple ways to do this, because it is going to want to spin when you remove those. You can use a tool like this, which will grip the nuts. This is just basically a pulley holding tool. You'll just kind of put the nuts, position them in here. That'll hold the pulley in place while you use the wrench to to pop them loose. That's one way to do it. The other way is just to shove a screwdriver in between a couple of nuts in order to hold the pulley while you put the wrench on, and then yeah, that's it. So this will do the same thing. It's a little bit harder depending on the kind of room that you're working with. Or the other way is, if you're lucky enough, you can just pop them loose with a quick jerk, as long as the belt is still on. That's if you're lucky. Doesn't look like we're going to be lucky. Nope, no luck. Alright, well, this hose is in my way, so it's coming off. Just get all the bolts loose before you actually take any of them out, because you're going to need those bolts in there to use your screwdriver or your tool in order to pull them and break them loose. Right in the bucket of coolant, of course. If you ever want to make sure that you find everything that you drop, just put a bucket of coolant underneath the car and everything will just fall right in there. Without the bucket of coolant, you'll never find it. All the nuts are loose on the fan, so we'll pull these 4 bolts off the fan shroud. You got 2 of these at the top and then 2 down at the bottom. Okay, we're going to need to pull the radiator because there's just not enough room between the radiator and the crank pulley to really get anything in there. We'll probably damage the radiator if we try, so let's get these hoses off the radiator. We got 2 transmission hoses, I believe. And the radiator hose. You also have 4 bolts holding the radiator into this bracket here, which is bolted to the frame or to the body, but we can leave the brackets on and then just remove the 4 bolts. There's 1 on each corner, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Let's get this belt off and then we'll check that crank pulley, see if it's going to be something you're going to be able to do or not. Okay, even with the radiator removed, there's not a whole lot of room here. Problem that we're working with is crank pulley here and the frame here and condenser. There's not a whole lot of room. This is a 22 millimeter crank bolt, so we're gonna have to get something on that. So we got a few options. We've got a kind of a mid-range electric impact. This is about 350 to 400 foot-pounds. That will fit down there, but it may not be strong enough. This would be ideal. This is the 1200 foot-pound electric impact, which will absolutely not fit down there. So we can't use that. So we're gonna we'll hope that the little impact will work, and if not, we'll have to do something else. Alright, well thankfully that worked. It makes things a lot easier. If you don't have the advantage of having that tool, or your bolt is rusty, you might have to do something different. So what you can do at this point, and if you want something more visual, check out my other timing belt video. It's on a Toyota. I'll try and link that down, but essentially what you'll do is you'll take something like this big breaker bar. You want to crank the engine over with the starter first to see which way this rotates, which way the pulley rotates. I believe it's going to be clockwise. Either way, you'll figure out which way it's spinning. Then you'll put the breaker bar here on the bolt, and once you determine which section of the frame it needs to be, because what's going to happen when you hit the starter and this is on here, it's going to hit the frame right there and break that bolt loose. So depending on which way the engine spins, honestly I just can't remember, will determine which side of the frame that you want your breaker bar. So it may take a few times. Like I said, if you need a visual, check out my other video for the Toyota 4Runner timing belt, and it'll show you exactly how to do it. Okay, we're going to remove the idler pulley and then start working on upper timing covers. There's a couple nuts here for the that are holding this coolant pipe on, so I want to get those off. And there's one down here just below that. And we'll pull the top clamp off the coolant hose. Get it out of our way. Okay, we have this cam sensor wire that comes through the timing cover right here. So we just need to pop this little rubber grommet off so we can slide the connector through. Okay, there's two more bolts on the compressor that we need to get off here on the top. There's one right here, and then there's one back here on the other side of these lines. You can't see, but you can feel it right back there where my finger's wiggling. So just get those off, drop the compressor down, and then get this fan bracket off. Okay guys, a little update. So the bolt we're looking for is it's not that one. It's actually this 12 millimeter right here. And it's blocked by that AC line. So we have a couple options. None of them are really good options, because what we have to do is remove the compressor and then remove the bracket that it's attached to. And so one option is to have the AC evacuated and remove that line. Another option is to just wrench it with an open-ended wrench, but you're going to need a good quality one so you don't round off that bolt. And if we're lucky, we can just kind of back it out all the way until the compressor falls, assuming that that's the last bolt that you do. That would be the best option at home, and that's what we're going to try. And hopefully that works. If you can't get that to work, then those AC lines are just going to have to come off. There's no other way around it if you can't get this bolt loose. So let's try that. Okay, the bolt's coming out. What we need to address here is this bracket. So if you see that bracket with the Phillips screw right there, well, it goes up here and it's actually hanging on. Okay, it's actually hanging on to the fan bracket. So this little piece right here is going to hang on, and it's not going to allow the compressor to drop out, which normally would be a good thing, except for the fact that we have that bolt that's right next to the AC line. So ideally, that Phillips screw would be a regular bolt and we could just take it off and get the bracket out of the way, but since it's a Phillips screw, it will probably not come out. So what I would do is just bend that piece of the bracket up out of the way just enough so that the compressor will start to fall down if you can't get that Phillips screw loose. I apologize guys, it's almost impossible to show you what I'm doing. So if you just want to look, I got a picture here of what's happening. I just bent that little bracket up and it has allowed the compressor to drop. So you just basically wrench this bolt all the way out until the compressor falls. Obviously this is only going to work if this is the last bolt, so do all the other 3 bolts first and then do this one last. Oh, and the line's peeing again. And this line is like peed for like 30 minutes and that's still not done. Okay, with the compressor off, we've got the bracket itself. The compressor was bolted to. It's got 3 bolts, one there, one down here, and then one back here. If you can see that. So we'll just take those 3 bolts out, get the bracket out of the way, and then once this bracket's out of the way, then we can pull this bracket out of the way. Okay, I got the crank bolt back in just so we can align the timing belt, give everything up to top dead center. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rotate this clockwise until we find the timing mark. Okay, I've got the mark here lined up with the 0. When you have that, you want to check the cams for their timing marks, because you're going to want to line up a timing mark that should be here to that line right there. Same thing on this side. There'll be a timing mark here, and we'll line it up with that line right there. As you can see, there's no timing marks, so we need to rotate the crank 1 more revolution. And look at the cams again, and we can see timing mark right here is in fact lined up with the line on the back of the timing cover. And then you can see on this side as well, we have this little indicator right there, as well as one back here, and they line up with this line right here. So it's not the T that you're lining it up with, it is the mark to the left of the T. So we've got that indicator, we have that one, and then we have the lines. Crank is on 0. Okay guys, I jumped around a little bit on my own, but I want to try and edit this in the right way. Now, before you pull the crankshaft pulley off and the belt and all that, what you should do, once you find the timing marks and get those all lined up, is actually rotate the crank pulley so that the timing mark lines up with the bolt here on this idler pulley. What that'll do is it'll kind of put the timing marks off quite a bit from where we lined them up. So you can see that one's, you know, past the T here. This one's going to be past the T. The reason we want to do that is because I usually do it after I pull the belt off, but what will happen is once you pull the belt off is that this will want to spring back around, which is okay. You could pull the belt off. Normally I'll pull the belt off and then rotate the cam with this bolt over into this location. It doesn't have to be exact right now because the marks on the belt will line everything up. But if you leave it right here, what's going to happen is this thing is going to spring down to about right there. The timing mark here, which will be right there, will spring down to somewhere around there. You don't want that to happen. So whether you do it before or after you pull the belt, you need to keep this in mind. If you've already pulled the belt, you need to get this cam rotated from there to somewhere right about there. Same thing with this one. This one doesn't jump as much, but it'll probably float somewhere around here. So just move it, you know, right around here to be safe, because we don't want this thing springing around. So anyway, that's about what we're looking for. We're looking for that mark lined up with that bolt. Gonna line that up right about there. And we'll line that up right about there. So this will make it easier, and that'll allow this thing to not spring back. And once we get the new belt with the new marks, we'll see exactly where we need this thing. But this is pretty close to where it should be. And this will keep the cam in a neutral, like a rest position, so it's not being forced back from the cam lobes. Okay, once the timing marks are all set up, we want to go down below and remove the timing belt tensioner. These are the two 12mm bolts right here. In order to avoid stripping the threads, what you want to do is just kind of back them off slowly in steps, back and forth. A little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, etc. until all the tension is off and the tensioner just drops down. Okay, we're at the point where we need to remove the crank pulley so we can get the timing cover, the lower timing cover off. Obviously a puller would work if you have one of those, and we'll do that if we have to, but sometimes on these Toyotas you don't need a puller, you just need a couple pry bars. You have to be careful doing this because it is plastic behind this, so you don't want to break anything, but if you give it a wiggle, you might see that it's looser than you think. And if not, then we'll use a puller. So thankfully that worked. If not, like I said, you'll just have to use a harmonic bouncer puller. But luckily that did work. So we'll remove the rest of the bolts for the lower timing cover. Okay, you want to pay attention to this right here because it can go on two ways, but it only is supposed to go on one way. If you look at it closely, you'll see that it's kind of concave. So when you put it back on, the correct way, the curve is facing outward towards the radiator. If you put it on the wrong way, like that, it'll tear up the timing belt, so we don't want to do that. Okay, we're going to need to remove this thermostat housing because it's bolted to the water pump. Okay, let's remove the water pump. What I like to do is get my new pump ready and remove the bolts one by one and place them where they go on the new water pump. Just in case some of them are different lengths, and it just makes it easy to figure out what is what. If they're all the same length, it doesn't matter. If they're different lengths, then this will make things easier. This bolt right here, we'll have to remove the tensioner first. So I'll go ahead and remove the rest of the water pump bolts, and then we'll get the tensioner out. Tensioner pulley is a 10mm Allen. So just notice we have this little piece of timing cover right here. It kind of sets up on the water pump like that. So we'll get that out. Okay guys, I'm going to call it here. Timing belt's off and water pump's off. Everything's good. Need to clean up those surfaces of the water pump as well as the thermostat housing. Unfortunately, this tensioner they sent me in the kit is wrong. That's the tensioner that we have. That's the tensioner that they sent. So I'm pretty much at a standstill. I can't get one today, so we're kind of at a standstill other than some cleaning and putting the water pump back on. So that's it for that. So I guess there's going to be a part 2, or I'll just wait to finish the video once the right parts are here. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what's happening. Anyway, thanks for watching. If there's going to be a part 2, then there'll be a part 2. Otherwise, you'll never even see this. And it'll just be one continuous, flowing, beautiful video. Otherwise, stay tuned for the shortened version, which will just be the timing belt itself and the water pump, for those that don't care to see all the disassembly up to that point. Alright, thanks for watching.